America-USA deportation deal, what a strategic value, not just for the United States of America, but also for African countries which have validated this deal to accept third party or third country immigrants into their respective nations. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this edition of your discursive informative program Global Insight, proposed to you of course by GLOBUS. And today we want to look at the strategic ramifications of the decision by some African countries to accept immigrants, not just of the African origin, to their respective nations in line with the decision taken by the Trump administration. It should be noted, America was built by slaves in the era of the heinous act of slavery. When the business flourished, bringing growth and stability to the Americas, the term shifted from slaves to migrants. Today, we are confronted with immigration crises which have marked their course in the context of international relations. Europe and the Americas in recent times have adopted a seemingly harsh stance against immigrants or migrants, whom they now call illegal criminals flooding their countries at large. Table turns indeed when value and relevance reduce. A case study that has attracted more global reaction pertaining the second Trump administration, whose guided policies under the philosophy of Make America Great Again has left the country in uncertainty in his public policy and foreign policy stance. Trump has vowed to clean America and first resulted in entering a deal with countries in Africa, among others, to deport what he terms as people who pose a threat to the country's security. Today's rendezvous of your discursive program Global Insight turns to African countries like South Sudan, Rwanda, Uganda, Eswatini for accepting third country immigrants deported by the US, looking at the strategic and diplomatic reasons behind them, bowing to the dictates of the Trump administration. At this juncture, a multitude of questions arise. What strategic value these agreements hold, both for sending and receiving nations? How do they affect diplomatic ties and resource allocations between the United States and these African countries? And what competitive value for African countries playing host to these immigrants who have been tagged criminals and unsafe for the supposed El Dorado, which is the United States of America, according to the dictates of the Trump administration. And we also look at how this is undermining the international laws guiding migration and other issues pertaining to humanity. This and more we're going to discuss with a panel of experts in today's edition of Global Insight, getting to understand the importance of this topic at this particular juncture, analyzing of course the strategic value or the competitive edge for the countries that have accepted to receive these immigrants, noting that majority of these nations, including Ghana and Rwanda, have underlined that the reason for opening their countries to these immigrants is to ensure that they do not feel the burnt of the heinous activities regarding the history of the genocide in Rwanda, and also noting that Ghana was a very pivotal nation in the era of slave trade. It will recall that I think in 2019 the year was actually coined the year of the return, where Ghana opened its doors for Africans of in the diaspora, marking 400 years since under the context of slavery and slave trade. Welcome again, ladies and gentlemen. Let me join you again right after this jingle to uncover the panel that will highlight the importance of this topic with us. I will join you right after that. Welcome back. I think we're going to first of all go straight to Russia and particularly to Moscow to meet Yulia Berg, political scientist and also founder of GLOBUS Expert Club. Welcome to this edition of Global Insight, Yulia, as we continue to discuss issues pertaining to humanity, migrant crisis, the move by the USA, and how this is actually affecting international relations strategically.
Hello, happy to join you today. Greetings from Moscow, Russia.
It's always a pleasure having you, as we are indeed in the world of transformation. We don't actually look at transformation in terms of those at the helm, but then we also look at transformation how today we are looking at people that helped in building a nation that today the world is acclaiming, that today they are termed illegal immigrants, and actually keeping them in states that is really wanting. And without much ado, Yulia, we're going to ask the very peculiar question, which is very holistic, understanding the deportation deal under the second Trump administration, and particularly with the African continent.
Yes, well, Trump has been taking quite radical positions in his negotiation style, and it's not the first time when such conversations are being raised in terms of having various kinds of deportation deals. And I would like to remind that previously Rwanda, for example, agreed for a deportation deal that was offered by the United Kingdom and applied to, or could have been possibly applied to, various kinds of citizens and refugees from different places, including the ones from Ukraine. So it's not the first time this kind of a practice is being implemented, but what else we have been noticing in terms of Trump and his rhetorics and his approach is that he likes to raise the bets to radical extremes, and then he takes them down. So sometimes he does certain moves in order to check the waters, in order to see the reaction from different countries. And again, in terms of the deportation deal, what we could see already by now is that South Sudan, Rwanda, and Ghana have been the first ones to accept the deal. And we will see how the situation would be unfolding in reality, because it's not yet clear how this could potentially solve the issue that Trump has been trying to deal with within the United States. Because for some of those countries, the quota, let's say, was around 250 people, which definitely is not solving the migration problem in the United States itself, and probably would not be having much of effect. I think some of this deal and some of those moves are pretty much a declaration and an attempt to check the waters, throw some points into the public agenda and so on, because it doesn't seem to be an effective practice. I mean, 250 here, 250 there is really not going to solve issues that are related to hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of immigrants with a legal status, or immigrants that are not satisfying the requirements of the U.S. legislation. Let's put it that way.
And of course, it brings us again to asking this question pertaining the position of African countries what have opened up the doors to welcome the supposed illegal immigrants, because according to some pundits, it was just normal that the United States actually puts this list of the supposed illegal immigrant public, identifying the various crimes committed so as to bring about some sort of accountability and transparency pertaining the decision. So again, how do you perceive the motivations from the part of the African continent underlining these deals? Do you see it as Africa being a dumping ground, or probably as these countries wanting to maybe opt strategically their collaboration or cooperation with the United States of America, pertaining the harsh stance which the Trump administration has taken recently on countries that are defiant to some of the policies at play at the moment?
Well, dumping ground is quite a radical term as well, and I don't think it's applicable in this particular case, because the numbers that at least the public part of the deal is all about are not extreme, right? So I would say that it looks more like something to be thrown in, or something to threaten the opponents, or threaten the immigrants themselves and whatsoever else, because it provides the grounds for Trump to say, look, here we have some of the African countries agreeing to accept those immigrants from the United States, and it's quite enough. It's quite enough to be saying, like, okay, fine, if you don't comply with our requirements and legislation, look, you're going to go to Ghana or South Sudan or whatsoever else. Yeah. And in the minds of many people, especially the American audience itself, this is a very contrasting alternative for those people. Of course, let's say South Sudan and the United States are very different in terms of infrastructure, culture, and many other things. So this might sound radical enough as a threat for some of the audience in the United States and some of the immigrants, because if they did come to United States illegally, and if they're doing whatsoever, probably moving to Ghana was not really a part of their life plan, right? Sure. So I think that it's more about making certain kinds of declarations, and it's more about just throwing in some radical rhetorics once again, but not about trying to solve the problem through deporting them there. Why not South America? I mean, even logistically speaking or financially speaking, logistics to South America would have been much easier for the United States to arrange. And in terms of political relations with many of those countries, they're quite under control of the United States. So why aren't they sending those people to some of the countries that are perceived as also as not complete but members of the United States, like Puerto Rico or whatsoever else? Yeah. I mean, the thing with sending them to Africa, this initiative itself, doesn't really make too much sense logically, because in order to save the problem, you need to send thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people there. And if they're deporting them and providing, even flights for them, once you multiply the numbers, you will see that it's becoming quite a costly thing for the U.S. budget itself. So it doesn't really make too much sense. Then how do you control, the further moves? How do you control what happens to them next? Yeah. How do you control that they don't come back through other countries, especially the ones that have been quite established in the United States in terms of their, lives and life plans and family and friends and career and whatsoever else? I mean, it doesn't seem to be something that is well thought through. Yet at the same time, it demonstrates the reaction of the countries, and it demonstrates, to a certain extent, loyalty of some of those countries that are ready to jump into something like this, just in order to show the support. Because once again, whatever funds or whatever can be provided in return for hosting 250 people definitely cannot be too much. I mean, by no logical means this could be, a valuable deal for a country's budget.
Given what you have said, Yulia, let's now answer this question, which we find in our preamble, actually the problematic, which is what strategic value. For given your holistic, introductory analysis, can we now present that strategic value both for the US or for Africa, and see if it's at a positive note or negative, and how is it now affecting not just internal politics or policies in the US or the receiving countries, but then positioning the countries in the context of international relations relating with other countries, and how this undermines the international laws guiding a migration crisis.
Well, we could see that Trump is not really, well, he doesn't really care much about what is a common practice and what is not. And on the one hand, it's one of his strengths, right? It's one of the reasons why he is a very untypical politician, if you like him or not, but that's what he is. I mean, he was already kind of caught by experts and by the public doing things that people are not really used to, including using the artificial intelligence in some of the cases and decision-making process that could have been the influence of Elon Musk or some other advisors that he had or he has around him. Yet at the same time, we see that he challenges the establishment quite a lot. He challenges the international community. He was claiming that, for example, the International Criminal Court is not a trustworthy organization, and the U.S. has not ratified the ICC as an entity, yet it's still using it quite a lot for political purposes. So Trump has been the one who started using the so-called Twitter diplomacy quite a lot. And a lot of his decisions are becoming known to the public, not by his press secretary, but through his Truth Social or previously Twitter accounts. He has been the one to take various kinds of diplomatic practices once again to the public space. Even if we recall the crisis he had with the Korean Kim Jong-un previously during his first term as the US president, and many other things that he's been doing are very provocative, very extreme, very radical in the way he acts, but that's just the style. I mean, when you look at the actual decisions, comparing them to the claims he makes and the statements, the public statement he makes, you will see really a lot of difference between those two. And you will see that the final decision is leaning towards the optimum. The final decisions are leaning towards some kind of a compromise. And many of the things he says just remain a test, a stress test to the system, a test, and he makes his conclusions out of it, and then he moves on to the next thing.
And we continue to watch the evolvement and analyzing both looking at the competitive edge or advantage of this this deportation deal, especially from the African continent, that drew a whole lot of mixed feelings, ladies and gentlemen, given that South Sudan, the world's youngest nation, actually is some sort of a crisis since the country gained its independence 2011. It has been a myriad of political upheavals between the political actors in that country, and then such a decision is true of that, like Yulia highlighted, that the number of migrants that actually we accepted into the country, and not really many, that could be a bone of contention as to how this is going to affect the internal dynamics and how the local population will react to this. But then we continue to look at how a move by this is, providing a scope for nations to understand the precepts of let me call it human diplomacy, and also how the world is taking another dimension in the new world order, if I should use the common terms that are very peculiar in contemporary society, bringing us again to understanding that there is a great transformation to seeing how African countries are taking a bold step and making laudable decisions, which others feel like it's a way towards greater independence and total sovereignty of nations at every level. But then we continue to look at how this is helping again to bring to the drawing board, or probably question the place of the supposed El Dorado. This is in line with the U.S. public policy. Recently, Steve Gill, who once served as an advisor to the Clinton and George's administration, Yulia, noted that the decisions taken by President Donald Trump at this particular moment has even left his own supporters in a state of uncertainty as to which direction he is taking as far as its foreign policy is concerned. And how has this even deteriorated Trump's public policy in the country itself? We've seen series of protests against some of the decisions taken by Trump in his quest of making America great again.
Well, making America great again, that has become pretty much a commonly used slogan for other countries and locations, is the goal that Trump has been setting, but that has turned out to be really hard to achieve, as the United States have been maintaining that very aggressive, dominant interventionist policy for the last several decades, and this was costing quite a lot of money for the U.S. budget. And this is the money that, on the one hand, the U.S. taxpayers themselves, they were losing, and they were not receiving the money they were supposed to for infrastructure and many other things. Yet at the same time, this kind of a policy required constant military activities, required constant and intense expansion of its interest into the countries, overthrowing regimes, creating chaos and whatsoever else, just because the let's say simple financial issues, the debit and credit, or the income and the expenses of the U.S. budget were not sustainable anymore. And by this I mean the incredible debt that the United States have. And this is also something to deal with, and I suppose for Trump as well. As for a businessman, it has become clear that you cannot be continuously operating externally, spending a lot of money for it in order to ensure the trust in the US dollar and in other systems controlled by the United States, including the SWIFT and whatsoever else, and still be maintaining a balanced policy, balanced domestic policy within the country. So Trump, what he's been trying to do is to put the focus, or at least, provide this kind of public rhetorics for the U.S. Electorate, that he would move the focus onto the domestic policy, changing the approach to tariffs, changing the approach to many other things related to international relations, like the military expenses, the role that it plays in NATO, the funds it provides to the NATO, to many other international organizations, including the UN and its various institutions and so on. And this definitely won the minds of the U.S. citizens that supported Trump, because they see that the situation in their pockets does not reflect the greatness that the United States is trying to carry out to other countries, right? And they started noticing that that people in other countries do exercise much more rights in some cases, or do have access to Hello?
Go on, please.
Yes, I was saying that there was just a recent trend, for example, on the United States social media, when people were comparing how they live with how people in China live. And when they learned that China is not a country under much pressure and dictatorship, and that people in China do have a very developed infrastructure, high-tech facilities, comfortable housing, and a lot of social welfare to support families, to support mothers, to support, various categories of people, which doesn't really exist in the United States. They started getting really upset because a regular, let's say, middle-class U.S. citizen has to pay for everything, incredibly high prices for healthcare, no maternal leave for mothers, taxes, very complicated taxation system that everyone has to go through, and whatsoever else, and really limited opportunities for various kinds of social support and social welfare, even comparing to European countries and many others. So for the people living in the States, it has become clear that whatever they have to deal with is their business, but the funding and the budget money of the United States is gone, spent on wars, is gone, spent on coup d'etat, is gone, spent on soft power policies all over the world, and people started getting quite tired of that, because they do not see how this might and greatness makes their lives better, and they see that the United States have been intervening in many countries, and it was not much of a success when we talk about the cases of Afghanistan, when we talk about cases of Iraq and many other countries that were violated by the United States. So Trump's policy oriented and focused on making America great again was a response to the demand of many people in the States that do not really understand why they should not be put first and why they should be suffering for very unclear goals and aims. But the answer is simple, because the U.S. is able to maintain that dominance in terms of the U.S. dollar being pretty much the only mean of exchange globally, and the SWIFT and many other, core financial, let's say, mechanisms. The states are maintaining that through the threatening policy that it applies to the countries that start talking about alternatives and start talking about creating something that will not be under the US control.
Talking about alternatives that will be independent of the control of the United Nations. Now, before going to listen to the Ghanaian president, I would like us to analyze on this aspect. We have looked at how this is affecting Trump himself. Yulia, let's now look at how this is going to affect the informal sector. We cannot actually undermine the role of that supposed slaves, the term that was very common in the days, actually played, especially in the aspect of agriculture, even during the industrial revolution in the country. So let's look at industrial revolution era. How is this deportation, I don't know if I should call it deportation spray, going to affect the informal sector in the United States of America, and how this is probably going to affect the global economic outlook of the country, given that these migrants are almost or always very instrumental in such areas or spheres?
I don't think it's going to be affecting the actual situation too much, because we don't see any big numbers now, and I don't think the program or this kind of deals would actually reach that extent, because what we see now in terms of the reports coming out to the press in terms of the deportation deal, it's like 250 here and some comparable numbers there. So it's not that millions of people would flow out of the United States. And the US I assume, is just making some kind of a revision in terms, in order to understand what can be done to the labor market and how they can further regulate migration in more effective ways, because you cannot make people breed, you cannot make people have children, and there is already a huge demographic gap. I mean, the previous couple of generations were basically opting for not having children to a great extent, or having just one child and whatsoever else. So there is nowhere else you can take those human beings from, but from other countries where the demographic situation is different.
Yeah.
So one way or another, those people would be needed in order to do the job in the States, especially if there is a plan to get some of the industries back, or to develop new industries or whatsoever else. You cannot really, just wipe it out. And even if you start using technology more, if you start using artificial intelligence more, it still doesn't mean that you wouldn't need people, even if we're being quite cynical and if we're looking at those situations from technocratic, from a technocratic point of view that
Yes.
is applied by Trump's team to a great extent. Like I said, the AI was a part of decision-making process to a great extent. Elon Musk, that inspired quite a lot of Trump's programs previously. He is also a technocrat that does not see the difference between between the divine and the artificial. So I don't think this particular deal would reach really high levels, but even if it does, then it means that it's just about a revision of migration policies, and an attempt to get rid of the immigrants that does not satisfy the actual needs of the United States.
Actually, thank you so much. Just to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that you're onto your platform Global Insider under the auspices of Globus, and of course, in the era of shifting alliances of narrative shift, we continue to analyze the ramifications and bring in a constructive analysis on how to capitalize on the advantages of the new realities that will be favorable to mankind. And that is why today we are looking at the US deportation deal, and the involvement of African countries is true, like has already been highlighted. We've not yet seen a scenario where a bulk of people are leaving, but then it's some sort of a gradual or subtle process that we've seen either 5 or 8 people visiting either or coming to Eswatini, South Sudan, Rwanda is yet to receive, and of course Ghana is already welcomed, sir. And what ramifications African nations are being already strategic at this particular juncture, given that on the 30th of September, I think this year, will be the end of the AGOA agreement with the United States. The countries actually looking at how to be in the good books of this project come after the 30th September deadline. Or what strategic value do you think was the for probably the thing that pushed the leadership of Ghana, Uganda, Rwanda, and otherwise or elsewhere to be able to adhere to these deportation deals, which according to some pundits, the real stakes behind the deal are yet to be unveiled. Just to note that we are live on YouTube and Facebook, so to be part of this program, you can always leave a comment of what you think, your appraisal on the deportation deal, and of course Trump's stance on migration at this particular moment, if that is actually what is needed at this particular moment to ensure that he attains his objective of making America great again. And of course, what scope of America great again? Are we talking about America great again in the aspect of Western hegemony? Are we talking about in the aspect of probably controlling the economy of the global world? And we continue to define all of these aspects and contextualize it to the realities pertaining humanity. Before we continue with our analysis, ladies and gentlemen, I will just invite us all to listen to the president of Ghana, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, who underlined that the country still enjoys some sort of good relationship or commendable relationship with Washington, and also highlighting reasons as to why the country opened its doors to the immigrants coming from the United States of America. Let's listen, and I'll join you right after that.
It's about Ghana-US relations. First, we were slapped with 10% tariff that was increased to 15%, and then we're included in 36 countries that were going to be placed on a visa ban. But in the meantime, all 5-year visas were cancelled, and we were restricted to single entry 3 months. It shows the tightening situation in our foreign relations, but I do think that we still enjoy good relations with the United States of America. We were approached by the U.S. to accept third-party nationals who were being removed from the U.S. And we agreed with them that West African nationals were acceptable, because all our fellow West Africans don't need a visa to come to our country. So if they decided to travel from US to Accra, they don't need a visa anyway. So if you're bringing our colleague West Africans back, I mean, that's okay. And so I think that agreement has been activated, and a first batch of 14 nationals came. Several of them were our Nigerian brothers. They opted to go back home, and so we facilitated, we put them on buses, to be able to go back home. One of them was a Gambian who it's not as easy. You have to get him an air ticket to be able to facilitate his travel. So what we've done is contacted their embassy to let them know of his presence so that they can facilitate his return to Gambia. And so that's the issue with regards to deportations and arrivals. West Africa has the protocol of free movement, and so any West African is free to come to Ghana and be able to stay for 90 days. And so if they decide to bring them, I mean, we don't have a problem accepting them.
And of course, President Dramani Mahama saying that Ghana doesn't really have a problem accepting the people coming from the United States of America. And I think we'll have to comment on this, Yulia, given that there's one Nigerian professor who recently actually declined an invitation to for a U.S. visa recently in the person of Soyinka, and he actually explained reasons for his rejection of this interview, noting that he had earlier discarded his green card. So it brings us again to throw more light into the excerpt presented by the Ghanaian head of state, Yulia, with you earlier on. We actually asked the question if what motivated African countries somehow is some sort of a strategic, positioning to continue to have a cordial relationship with the United States of America, and can we actually ascertain that these relationships have been really mutual per se? Hello, Yulia. Can you hear me, please? Unfortunately, we cannot connect Yulia at this particular moment. While hoping that everything is settled, we continue to remind you of that, ladies and gentlemen, this is your discursive, informative program, Global Insider, on your platform. We continue to look at the ramifications of the deal by the United States of America to bring immigrants, which others have been tabled as being a threat to the security of the state, to countries in Africa. And we see how countries have shown their willingness in Africa to accept this, and they have already accepted. Is it strategically a strategic positioning for countries in Africa wanting to continue to enjoy from the benefits of the AGOA, or is it because Africa is seen as a dumping ground for immigrants with people with very questionable background, according to what the United States presented as to why they have to leave their country? This and more we continue to analyze, and at the same time we are looking at how human interests, geopolitics, politics come to some sort of a confluence, asking how this is going to affect decision making at the international arena pertaining migration, and in the lines of respect for humanity, and you can name the rest. Everything being equal, we go back to Yulia to having a clear analysis as to the excerpts presented by President John Dramani Mahama of Ghana. Unfortunately, we still cannot connect to him while waiting that everything goes on well. Let's continue to listen to the excerpt this time around from the Foreign Minister of the Republic of Ghana.
Which was both psychologically and physically distressing. They were also faced with the risk of being deported. During his first media engagement on 10th September 2025, His Excellency President John Dramani Mahama confirmed that Ghana has accepted some West African nationals who had been deported from the United States. Providing further elucidation, the President indicated that the U.S. government had approached Ghana with a request to receive some of these individuals, and his administration agreed to do so, provided they were nationals of West African countries. The President disclosed that the first batch of deportees, numbering 14 people, had already arrived in Accra. Among them were nationals of Nigeria and the Gambia, who have been assisted to return to their respective countries. The government of Ghana took the principled and humanitarian decision to accept the limited number of West African nationals deported from the United States under exceptional circumstances, in line with Ghana's long-standing Pan-African ideals and unwavering commitment to regional solidarity. Many of these individuals were being held in detention, which was both psychologically and physically distressing. They were also faced with the risk of being deported to countries that are not safe and do not have the stability and human rights credentials Ghana is famed for. Let me emphasize that under this understanding with the United States, Ghana must first independently vet the background of those the U.S. intends to deport to first satisfy ourselves that they do not pose any threat to the security of our country and that they cannot harm our citizens. We have put in place strict safeguards to ensure that convicted, hardened criminals cannot be brought into our country under this understanding. The Mahama administration will never compromise the safety and well-being of Ghanaians. It is important to stress and to state unequivocally that Ghana has not received and does not seek any financial compensation or material benefit in relation to this understanding. Our decision is grounded purely on humanitarian principle and Pan-African solidarity, to offer temporary refuge where needed, to prevent further human suffering, and to maintain our credibility as a responsible regional actor. Ghana's decision must be understood as an act of Pan-African empathy. It is not transactional. Like Rwanda, Eswatini, Uganda, South Sudan, who are welcoming fellow Africans, we are standing up for our brothers and sisters in distress. And this should not be misconstrued as an endorsement of the immigration policies of the Trump administration. It is worth emphasizing that since the days of our forebears, Ghana has hosted freedom fighters, welcomed all Africans in the diaspora, offered them safe haven, resources, citizenship, and even our passports. That is why we are seen as the Mecca of Pan-Africanism. We shall not depart from that inspiring track record.
It's about Ghana-US relations. First, we were slapped with 10% tariff that was increased to 15%, and then we're included in 36 countries that were going to be placed on a visa ban But in the meantime, all 5-year visas were cancelled, and we were restricted to single entry 3 months. It shows the tightening situation in our foreign relations, but I do think that we still enjoy good relations with the United States of America. We were approached by the U.S. to accept third-party nationals who were being removed from the U.S. And we agreed with them that West African nationals, were acceptable, because all our fellow West Africans don't need a visa to come to our country. So if they decided to travel from US to Accra, they don't need a visa anyway. So if you're bringing our colleague West Africans back, I mean, that's okay. And so I think that agreement has been activated, and a first batch of 14 nationals came. Several of them were our Nigerian brothers. They opted to go back home, and so we facilitated, we put them on buses, to be able to go back home. One of them was a Gambian who is not as easy. You have to get him an air ticket to be able to facilitate his travel. So what we've done is contacted their embassy to let them know of his presence so that they can facilitate his return to Gambia. And so that's the issue with regards to deportations and arrivals. West Africa has the protocol of free movement, and so any West African is free to come to Ghana and be able to stay for 90 days. And so if they decide to bring them, I mean, we don't have a problem accepting them.
And of course, it's just because the country cares for humanity and not a way of endorsing the immigration policies of President Donald Trump. We heard, of course, the view of the authorities in Ghana, but then we continue to ask a whole lot of questions or examine the trends that are happening across the African continent. We will pick that the turbulence in the global world has given a way for African renaissance in every aspect, where today a whole lot of countries are actually abolishing the visa regime for nationals of the African descent. And I think that is one thing that is going to boost intra-Africa trade and make it more flexible to up the economic buoyancy in the continent, and also to define a clear trajectory for development and sustainability across all scope of affairs of the African continent. With this topic in mind, we continue to ask questions along lines of geopolitics and even the economic dynamics as to what economic incentive or geopolitical consideration are at play for African nations, particularly Rwanda, Ghana, Eswatini, which is very problematic according to some report in terms of human rights position, and how this accepted individuals can navigate life in the new area, because according to some analysts, they were actually so concerned about the fate of migrants, given that they are making way to a new country without any clue of what awaits them. That is the philosophy of uncertainty, and I think it's some sort of problematic at this juncture. Now this is another point of focus where we might want to consider how these arrangements, which are not yet made public per se, between the governments of Ghana, Rwanda, Eswatini, South Sudan in particular, can affect the broader trade negotiations with the United States of America, things like foreign aid, or even their diplomatic engagements with the United States. According to reports from South Sudan, it was revealed that the government actually asked the United States of America to, reduce some sort of sanctions, or even to cancel sanctions which have already been imposed on some government officials. So it's some sort of bringing us to wanting to understand if there is some sort of a diplomatic game of chase as far as the migrant situation or migration crisis is concerned under the Trump administration, and how African nations are setting in at this particular moment. Aside the geopolitical dispensation of the situation, we also look at the humanitarian responsibilities, ladies and gentlemen, because when we hear migration, we think about humanity, and years after years we see reports coming from the fact that millions of people actually die indulging in perilous journeys to the supposed Eldorado in Europe, crossing the Mediterranean. But today we see that Europe in general, not just the United States, has actually taken a decisive stance towards the migration policies. It should be noted some time ago that even the East African nation of Rwanda still entered negotiations on how to receive migrants from the United Kingdom. However, this was overturned with the new government that took over in the United Kingdom. So we look particularly at the humanitarian responsibilities, and how the rights advocates are, analyzing these things, and how it's going to, or it is already affecting the situation, the humanitarian phase of the U.S. in line with public policy, in line with its engagement with other countries having high regard for humanity. So it is very imperative that we equally ask how African governments can now balance these deportation deals with their humanitarian responsibilities to protect the rights and welfare of deportees. And it also presents a problematic still for African countries to make the continent or various countries a safe haven for citizens, so as to ensure that the limit the number of people fleeing the country for one reason or the other. That is to ensure that the social contracts that most governments do enter with electorates. This is particularly during the era of elections. It is if they should respect the social contract and ensure that the vibrant youth is actually very active or buoyant economically. It's going to make the continent a very safe and fertile place for people to stay, and will equally reduce the migration that we see in contemporary society, and this will limit the discourse across the globe pertaining the position of Africans along lines of migration, social and political ramifications. We also look at it, how might these agreements between the Trump administration and also African countries, particularly Eswatini and South Sudan, countries that reports have presented that are very vulnerable at this juncture. I recall one Eswatini commenting on this decision, and he was decrying the fact that at this moment the country is still trying to save the interest of nationals who do not really have their best. So it is not proper to engage in such high stake negotiations with the United States. But then we want to look at the diplomatic stakes of it, ladies and gentlemen, and what are the long-term strategic consideration that all stakeholders need to put in place, be it at the level of the government, at the level of the civil society, human rights organizations, or even international organizations that control the activities of migration. And so this is what is at the table for discussion this day, ladies and gentlemen. We actually apologize for the internet disruption that has made it impossible for our panel of experts to be with us this day, but this is a topic of vital importance, which we are going to subsequently come back to it to continue to analyze the strategic value both for the United States of America and both for countries, particularly in Africa and elsewhere, that have accepted to welcome or open their doors to the migrants, to helping them in this process. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you for your time and thanking the technical crew for ensuring that we could put together these elements of vital importance in today's world of global transformation, even at the human level. And we are going to come back subsequently to look at the stakes involved in a topic like this. Thank you so much. It is on this note, ladies and gentlemen, that we draw the curtains on today's edition of your discursive and knowledge sharing program, Global Insight, brought to you by GLOBUS.
This program was brought to you by GLOBUS.